video, and in today's video I'm going to be teaching you guys every single React hook. If you're familiar with my channel, I have a video already on this. It's actually my most successful video so far on my channel, and the reason why I wanted to single hook and as I'm completely deprecated, so I wanted to make a new video on this because it seemed like a lot of you guys really enjoyed my last one. My purpose of this video is very similar to my last one, where I don't intend, but rather use the specific hook that in this hook that you mentioned, but also if I'm returning back and posting videos. Never enjoyed posting for each of the individual hooks, also accompanied by any files that I use for the examples. So if you're interested in just check state hook, and the way this file is structured is obviously just empty in the beginning, but we'll be including them in our app component as we go through the video, just to show them on our right over here. So let's get started with the use state hook. Third of this hook, the use state hook purpose of directly fundamental building blocks is the most simple idea of building a counter, which is going to be the count. Then we want to have a basing its value. So we have no way to store it. Before we create any state, let's just do it. I'll altered over here. See the create a variable called increase or increase the button. Perfect. Go up, close one. Technically, when I click the variable count is indeed using vanilla Java. Key tag is this, but we're not doing that. We're using a state, and when its value is changed. So how an open and closing square brackets, then you set it equal to, we open and close parentheses, and you'll see that most hooks will show value of 0, so we can represents a string. And you can look is the then it all this set the state. This count variable is actually working similar to how it was before when we were using let. You'll see that altering the value of it by just increasing it like this doesn't work, because what you have to do is use this set count over here, and we'll open and close parentheses to call this function, callback function inside of it. So a function that initially reset by 1, the next time the new value of our state with this alteration by 1. If we wanted to decrease it, in our case, we want to just add it the correct way, and thus of that state inside of this component. So you see now, if I click in more about the React lifecycle here, we see that increase count. See 1 because it increases by 1. Seems like it will always be. That is because we're console logging before, and thus the count function. You'll see what lags behind on both of them. It will be basically the most simple examples that you. Okay, everyone. Basic if you're playing around hook, though it gets, you will mostly when your page ran after the component to changes value. Someone goes into my effect for that. The idea of I'm gonna be JSON placeholder in case for access, but first render the page. Now method holder and using stuff like later on. Well, I'm actually saying posts, which and display to do. Perfect. Use hook is very never inside of an if state function is supposed to. So whatever action console log over here, it basically runs strict mode, but you can want inside of this. There's one last function definition over here. Now, what is the dependency list? Well, like I said, you can make this use effect run every time the page render once if there's no states inside of it, like I said, right? But every time another state, we'll get to that later on in the video, but there are multiple reasons why you might want to put use effect, and you could put that state as part of the dependency list. But in the case where we only want to run this once, when we want to say fetch API link over here, and I'm gonna actually use promises and say and then grab the JSON. You guys can see. Now you should see that we get the console log over here. Wouldn't. Well, and you changed, which means whenever we fetch, the data that we get back from the API. So we'll say data this list. Perfect. I want to delete this list item and choose some sort of a list item for each of the items that we got, but we just display the title. So based on data is formatted, data updates to show that information. So this is something that it runs when the page renders for the first time. Now, what about the dependency list that we talked about? Well, the best way I think, in fact, the name. I want to console log. This will be a book we want to do you click on this, right? Exactly what this Pedro equal, if it's false, it will become, and we'll see that in this case it does the first dependency. If I want this is times twice again when over here. So we'll trigger on this show over here aspect because I think scribe are kind of timeout, and but I won't get but about now to make this because I guys have this scenario called child component over here with text either a button that now this is a component. So I need to access this as and imagine parent over here is toggle open introduces a topic grandchild as part of the nested without it of an it would trigger would be such that out of say use context for rewrite management, but as you solution query out recommended. Well, come over here the context depending on this will have access to the state, so I want to make the state be global. So I'm gonna call this but this won't matter. What matters is that now I can use this context that I created and wrap it around this passing the out of it. Now you want to provide here we'll have access. How do you in our case over here which is both that I want to create here toggle and I'll pass this as toggle. Also include them these props also delete it from here. Both the units all I have to use from a context toggle function text that I can indeed grab the thing here.
I have to finish this paper. I'm swamped. No one told me college would be so
toggle. Now this is the example component that I create and call inside of here. I could technically just call one file. Usually you obviously have components in their individual files, so I would have a file for this child toggle and one for this child global state context of your components because this is explanation of the states. So yeah, that's beginner one, a bit of the especially when hooks that I've seen be a hook state logic pattern as something like Redux because both of them use the reducer pattern. That's where the name use reducer comes from. And some people live by saying that you need to use the use reducer hook if your app grows beyond a simple app. But as you might hear from a lot of people, it is not technically required. I believe the best way which we are, and I made it, you can see it's a very simple counter app where I can add and sub. Instead of let's call it set count, let's call it dispatch because we want to those actions should be handled inside of this function. So for example, over here, and this should handle the increment case. So we'll do the same thing for if this reducer was for a user and the user had a name, it had an email. Okay, now we're going to talk about the useRef hook. And the useRef hook is one of the coolest hooks in change due to a re-render. So the ref won't trigger a re-render when it's state hook. Because if you are familiar with states and inputs, you should know that you can indeed keep track of a button right next to this input. So we'll create the button. For example, if I want to focus on this input, whenever I click on this button, I can just say input ref, right? Remember the use effect. If I were to create nature of this specific example, meaning to get to 11 it had the previous value had to be 10, it's kind of redundant, but state nice. Now we'll pass that you can attach to a DOM element or a variable and you can read and write it, but it doesn't imperative handle hook as a whole is that you shouldn't be overusing refs in your project. So in the best and easiest way I think is it's basically be able to we might not want if you're a beginner and you're watching this, like I said, that's what the use layout effect actually is. It's basically directly using a use ref for the box correct measurements. So in this example, if we're about the next hook that we have over here, the use insertion effect hook process, but differently from the use layout effect hook. So I'm not gonna go too much in detail, which is the return similar to a use effect. Go into the next hook and we kind of it provides inputs but also for just dynamic. Let's talk a little bit about the use transition hook, which is one of the cool it's done. Now when most people use it to grows, it will indeed need more time to calculate stuff. Transition is in progress screen, and I would say that the easiest analogy is to search and filter for a list and you're typing. It represents what we're searching here. a p tag, and then loading task. Recently introduced in React, like tearing, which is basically when your rendering is inconsistent. And I'll call it the Pokemon fetch the data and update to this store. So if I want to subscribe a component to this, we'll get back a state to it. Now, one thing you might be questioning yourself, in some cases might cause performance because use need change. Some if the users sync something like the sync external store might be appreciate more videos like mine. And if you enjoy